We continue now at the top of Daf Nun Vav Amar Aleph and Meseches Bava Kamma. This is Bava Kamma Daf 56a. And the previous summon, the Gemara listed a number of cases which are Pater Midinei Adam and Chayev B'dinei Shamayim. And one of the cases was Poretz Geder B'fnei Behemes Chaveiro. A person breaches the fence in front of the animal of his friend and he lets the animal out, essentially an indirect cause of damage. And so the Gemara said again, Pater B'dinei Adam, Chayev B'dinei Shamayim. But the Gemara asked what kind of wall it was. If it is a wall that was a strong wall, so he should be Chayev B'dinei Adam at least for the wall. That's how Rashi explains the Gemara. And the Gemara therefore answers, you're right, Bekosel Re'ua, we're talking about a wall that is a weak wall, it's coming down anyway. As Rashi says, Bekosel Re'ua, Delo Afsede, he didn't make him lose anything on the wall. Delo Mistar Koy, it is set to be destroyed anyhow, and therefore there is no Chiyuv again, B'dinei Adam, there's only a Chiyuv B'dinei Shamayim. And the Gemara continues to the next case. Amar Mar, the master said, we said earlier, Hakofef Kamaso Shel Chaveiro B'fnei Hadleika. If somebody bends the stalk, let's say it's a stalk of grain of his friend towards the fire and causes it to burn, that's another case where again, Pater Midinei Adam and Chayev B'dinei Shamayim. And the Gemara says, hey Chidami, what exactly is the case? If you're going to say that the case is that the fire can reach this stalk of grain with a regular normal wind, B'dinei Adam nami nechayev, so he should be Chayev B'dinei Adam. That's like an active kind of damage. Rashi says, the Motile Kishakafefa Higia Bo Hadaleika Beruach Mitsuya, regular wind allows the fire to reach there. Hare Biadayim Hiver, he essentially lit it on fire himself. Uvidinei Adam nechayev, he certainly should be Chayev B'dinei Adam. Rather, the Gemara says the case is that he bends it, and when an uncommon wind, a stronger than normal wind comes along, it can cause it to light on fire. That's a case where, again, Pater B'dinei Adam, but Chayev B'dinei Shamayim. Rashi says, Beruach She'ena Mitsuya Demidi de lo Salga Daiti. That's something that wouldn't have occurred to him. That's why he's Pater B'dinei Adam. And the Gemara gives another answer to understanding this case of bending the stalk of grain towards the fire. For Rav Ashi says, Tamun Itmar. The case over here actually is, what he does with the stalk of grain is he covers it up so that it's tamun, so that it's hidden from view. The halacha is that if a fire damages something that's tamun, the owner of the fire is actually pater in that case. It's one of the exemptions by Eish. And so therefore he's really caused a loss of money indirectly, but he's caused a loss of money to this person who owned the stalk of grain, because by covering it up, now that person can't recover any of the money. And so that's a situation of indirect damage. So he's Pater Midinei Adam and Chayev B'dinei Shamayim Mishum Deshavya Taman Be'esh, because what he's essentially done is he's rendered this a case of Taman Be'esh, and now he's made it again that the person is not able to collect. Rashi says, Tamun Itmar Shekiso Kamas Chaveiro, he covered over the stalk of grain of his friends, Besadinin, he used cloths to cover it over. Kisharod Deleka Etzla, when he saw the fire coming, V'hulo Sholach Esabeira, he's not the one that made the fire. V'shavya Tamun, what he did was he created it that it's a case of Tamun. V'garam Lahafsid Es HaNizik, now the Nizik has lost out. V'lifter Es HaMaver, now the person who made the fire is Pater, to Pater al Tamun Be'esh, because there's an exemption by Tamun Be'esh, as we said. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Amar Mar, the master said, this was the next case. That was Pater B'dinei Adam, Chayev B'dinei Shamayim. Hasocher Eidei Sheker. Let's say somebody hires false witnesses, and that causes a loss of money. That again is indirect, and therefore Pater B'dinei Adam, Chayev B'dinei Shamayim. But the Gemara says, Hey Chidami, what exactly is the case? Ilemu L'nafshe, if he's hiring the false witnesses in order for him to collect money unrightfully, so Mamona Boy Shaluma, he will need to pay back that money. Uvidinei Adam Nami Nachayev, he actually is Chayev B'dinei Adam in that case. And so the Gemara says, Ella, rather, the case obviously is Lechavre. He hires the false witnesses for his friend, so he causes someone else to lose in some other case. That's a case, again, indirect. He's Pater B'dinei Adam, but Chayev B'dinei Shamayim. Rashi says, Lenafshe, if it's for himself, Lahotzi Maman Mechaver La'atzmo, he's trying to get money for himself from his friend, not rightfully, Memona Boy L'Shlum, he'll have to pay that money back. Also, Maman Shehotzi Chayev L'Hachzer, the money that he took, he has to return. And so the Gemara says, L'chavre, rather the case as he did it for his friend, Sachar Eidei Sheker Lahotzi Mana Me Ruvain L'Shimon, he hired false witnesses to take a mana away from Ruvain and give it to Shimon, and again, that would be a case of Pater B'dinei Adam and Chayev B'dinei Shamayim. And the next case was V'hayodea Eidus L'chaveru Ve'eno Meidlo, somebody knows testimony on behalf of his friend, but he doesn't testify. Another case where Pater B'dinei Adam, Chayev B'dinei Shamayim. And the Gemara says, B'may Askinan, what exactly is the case in this case? Ilema B'beitrei, if we're talking about a situation where there are actually two people who are able to testify, and then he makes it that he doesn't testify, he causes that the case is therefore the person doesn't win the case. So Pshita, so that's obvious. D'oraisa, who that's actually an Isser D'oraisa. Im lo yagid v'nasa avono, it says that he's going to to bear the sin if he doesn't testify when he's supposed to testify. And Rashi says, Pshita de'oraisahu dechaya b'dinei shamayim. The Gemara is asking, it's obvious. It's a de'oraisa that he's violating. He's certainly chaya b'dinei shamayim. Im lo yagid, that's what the pasuk means when it says, Im lo yagid b'trei kamishtoi. That's talking about two witnesses who don't testify. The context of the pasuk implies that had they testified, then the money would have been taken. That's only true by two people. V'yod kaimlan, and furthermore, anyway, we've established kol makom shenemar eid. Anytime the pasuk says the word eid, harei kan shnei eidim, it's really talking about two witnesses. Ad sheyifrad l'cha kasav echad, unless the pasuk specifies one witness. K'dichsiv lo yakum eid echad b'ish, like it says lo yakum eid echad. There it specifies one witness, but otherwise we assume two witnesses. In any case, if it's two witnesses, it's obvious. And so the Gemara says ela b'chad. Rather, what the case is there only is one witness, and he's the witness, and he doesn't testify. So in that case, what he's essentially doing is, had he testified, the other guy would have had to take an oath, because you have to take an oath when there's one witness, and then maybe he wouldn't have taken the oath, because maybe he wouldn't have wanted to swear falsely, and so then again, the person would have paid the money instead, so he's causing this indirect damage, and that's why he's chayav b'dinei shamayim, patur b'dinei adam, but chayav b'dinei shamayim. And Rashi explains, Ela b'chad, again, rather it's by one witness, Shemachayev Oshvu, that had he testified, there would be a chiyuv to take an oath, Uvedinei Shamayim Mechayev, so therefore if he doesn't testify, he's going to be chayev b'dinei Shamayim, Diyav Masid Mechayev Leishvu, because had he testified, again, the person would have had to take an oath, V'dil Malo Hava Mishtaba, maybe he wouldn't have wanted to take the oath B'shikra, he wouldn't have wanted to take the oath falsely, U'mishalim, and therefore he would have paid, and again, that's why, again, there's a chiyuv b'dinei Shamayim, and the Gemara continues, V'sulaka, but are there no other cases of chiyuv and bidei shamayim? You gave this list of cases. Aren't there other cases? As Rashi says, "V'suleka dechayvin and bidei shamayim." Are there no further cases of chiyuv and bidei shamayim? Va'ika, but we have the following cases: ha'osa malacha b'mei chatas uveparas chatas. Let's say somebody does work with the mei chatas that was used to purify somebody who is tamei meis. Paras chatas also, that's the para aduma. That's used to create the mechatas. So those things, you're not allowed to do work with them. And if you do, you disqualify it. That's essentially, you're causing a damage, but indirectly. Pater medinei adam v'chayei b'dinei shamayim. The halach over there is pater medinei adam v'chayei b'dinei shamayim. That's another case. Va'ika hanosin sam hamavis b'fnei behemes chaver. There's another case, the case of putting poison in front of the animal of his friend. Again, pater medinei adam v'chayei b'dinei shamayim. He's pater in terms of the courts in this world, but he's chayei b'dinei shamayim. He's chayei in the heavenly courts. And the Gemara continues with another case. There's the case of sending a fire in the hands of a deaf mute or an imbecile or a minor. That case also, it's causing indirect damage. The person is patur midinei adam, but chayav b'dinei shamayim. And then there's also the case of causing damage through frightening the person, making a sound in his ear. Again, that's also patur midinei adam, chayav b'dinei shamayim. It's patur midinei adam, chayav b'dinei shamayim. And there's another case, nishbar kado b'Rosh Hashanah. Let's say a person's jug breaks in Rosh Hashanah, velo silka, he doesn't remove it. Nafla gemalo velo hamida, his camel falls and he doesn't stand it up. That was a machlokas we had earlier. Rabbi Meir mechayev behezekon. Rabbi Meir said you're chayev in the damages. V'chachamim omrim, and the chachamim said the chachamim say pater b'dinei adam, v'chayev b'dinei shamayim. You're pater b'dinei adam, but chayev b'dinei shamayim. So what about all of these examples? And the Gemara says in yes mio ikatuva. There are actually a lot of examples. V'hani etzrichle, but it was these specific ones that we listed on the previous Amud that were necessary, because in these cases, Mahu Detema, what might you have said? B'dinei Shamayim Nami Lo L'chayev. You might have said that even B'dinei Shamayim there shouldn't be a Chayev in these cases, as we'll explain. So Kamash Malan, that's why we specifically list these cases to say there is a Chayev B'dinei Shamayim. And the Gemara goes through each case. There's the case again where a person breaches the fence in front of the animal of his friend, causes the animal to go out. Mahu Detema, what might you have said? Kevan de Mystery Kai, since this was a wall anyway that was to be destroyed. Ma Ovid, what did he do already? B'dinei shamayim nami lo l'chayev. Maybe he shouldn't even be chayev b'dinei shamayim. Kamash V'lana comes to teach us that he is chayev b'dinei shamayim. Hakofef kamaso shel chaver nami. Also the case where the person bends the stalk of grain of his friend into the fire. Ma'u detema, what might you have said? Lema mi hava yadana da'as yeruach she'ena mitzuya. The guy can say, did I know that there was going to be an uncommonly strong wind that came along? Uvidinei shamayim nami lo l'chayev. So you might might think even in Dinei Shamayim, the person shouldn't be chayev. Kamash Malon, again, that's what it teaches us, that there is a chiyuv b'dei Shamayim. Rav Ashi damar nami tamun itmar, and according to Rav Ashi's approach, where it was tamun, you caused the damage by covering up the stalk of grain. So ma'odetema, what might you have said? Ano kisuye kesise nahalich uvedinei Shamayim nami lo lechayev. All that I did was I covered it up, and I was trying to do that in order that it shouldn't burn so quickly, and therefore he's claiming that he shouldn't be chayev b'dinei Shamayim. Kamash Malon, again, it comes to teach us that he is chayev b'dinei Shamayim in this case. V'asocher edei sheker nami, and also when a person hires false witnesses, ma'odetema, what might you have said? Lema, that the person can say divrei harav, divrei hatalmud, divrei mishomin. If it comes to the words of the master, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the words of the Talmud, the student, me, who hired them, why are they listening to me? Why are these edei sheker testifying and listening to me? They should listen to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Uvidinei Shamayim nami lo lechayev, and in Dinei Shamayim also he shouldn't be chayev. Kamash Malon. So that's why we have that case to say that there's a chiyuv b'dei Shamayim. Vayodea edus lechaveru ve'eno meid lo, and then there was the case where the person knows testimony of his friend ve'eno meid lo nami. In that case also he doesn't testify. Why do we have that case? Because ma'odetema, because what might you have said? Miyemar dechihavim misadino lei havamoda. How do you know that if I would have testified he was going to admit? Maybe not. Dilma havim ishtabel shikra. Maybe he would have taken the false oath, and therefore I didn't cause any damage. Uvidinei Shamayim nami lo lechayev, and then in Dinei Shamayim the person shouldn't be chayev. You might have thought that. Kamash Malon. So that's what it's teaching us, that he is chayev b'dinei Shamayim. And we will take a look at Rashi. Ha'osa malacha b'meichatas. A person does the work with the meichatas, again, that's used to purify someone who's tamei meis. Shashakal kenegdon mishkalos. The case is that the person used it as a weight. But Meseches gitted v'hein nifsalim b'malacha. They become disqualified through that malacha. Pater midinei adam. In this case, you're pater midinei adam. To hezek she'eno nikr lo shmei hezek. In that case, it's actually a damage that's not recognizable. It's not for the exact same reason that it's indirect, but it's an unrecognizable damage there. V'kulo hani tiyuftim masnai seninu. All of the questions that we're asking now are from Brises, says Rashi. Hamavis takalo ba'azno pisam. The person makes a noise in his ear suddenly, uviaso, and causes him to be frightened. To lo'avid be'maisa begufo. That damage is not happening through an action against his body. Rabbi Meir mechayev behezek. Rabbi Meir says chayev in the damages. This is talking about the case where the jug breaks in Rosh Hashanah, he doesn't remove it, or the camel falls and he doesn't stand it up. That's a machlokas tanoim we had earlier. Rashi says pluksayim mefarsha b'haminiach zakad. We explained this machlokas earlier in Perak HaMeniach, B'niskal Posheya uva Mafkir Nizakav. The Machlokes Reb Meir and the Chachamim have to do with the concept of Niskal Posheya. When a person stumbles, is that considered negligence? And also when a person has the items that damage, he's Mafkir them, he makes them ownerless. There's a Machlokes about that as well. But in any case, the point is the Chachamim say Pater B'dinei Adam and Chaya B'dinei Shamayim. And then the Gemara said that in each case, there's an argument the person can make. Maybe he shouldn't even be Chaya B'dinei Shamayim. So for example, Anna Kisuye Kisise, the person can say by Talmud that I was covering it up. I wanted, as Rashi says, Shelo Tavir Boha Eish Maher. I was trying to make it that the fire shouldn't consume it. Why should I be responsible? B'dinei Shamayim. And Divrei Harav Shoman, who do you listen to, the Talmud or the Rav? V'hayolahem Shelo Ya'ida. The witnesses shouldn't have testified. It's not my fault. If I hired them, they still should not have testified. That's why, again, you might think he's not Chaya B'dinei Shamayim. And so it comes to teach us that he is Chaya B'dinei Shamayim. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Nifritza B'layla Oshe Partsua Listim, if the fence was breached during the night, or the robbers, they breached the fence, so then we say that the owner is pater. And the Gemara says, Amar Rabba says, V'husha Chasra. This is true specifically when the animal tunnels its way under the wall. That's something that's not to be expected, and that's how the fence was breached. So that's when we say that the owner is pater. But the Gemara says, Avalo Chasra, but let's say it didn't tunnel its way. What would be the halacha chayev? Then are we saying that the owner would be chayev in the case of Nifritza B'layla? Hey Chidami, what exactly is the case? Ilema B'kosel Bari, if we're talking about a strong wall, Kilo Chasra, my chayev, even in a situation where it didn't tunnel, why should he be chayev? My Havalei Lemevad, what more could the owner have done if there was a strong wall that was closed? Of course he's going to be pater. Ela B'kosel Ruah, but then you're going to say we're talking about a wall that really is not very strong. So Ki Chasra, so even in a situation where it tunnels under, which is something that's unexpected, but still on my pater, why should the owner be pater? Tchilaso b'pshia v'sofa b'onasu. That's a case where originally there is negligence, and in the end, okay, it was an onus. It was something unexpected that the animal tunneled, but that should still be chayiv because tchilaso b'pshia. He used the kosel ru'ua. Initially, there is a negligence over there. And hanichel mandamar tchilaso b'pshia v'sofa b'onas pater. Now it could work out according to the one who says that tchilaso b'pshia and sofa b'onas is pater. That could actually be the case of the Mishnah. The case of the Mishnah Mishnah is that it is not a strong wall, it's tchilaso b'pshia, but since the animal tunneled under, and that's considered sofa bonus, it's pater, that would work out according to that shita. El lamad damar tchilaso b'pshia v'sofa bonus chayiv, but according to the one who says tchilaso b'pshia v'sofa bonus is chayiv, ma'ikol, remember, what are you going to say? How do we understand this Mishnah? And so the Gemara says, Ela masnisun b'kosel bari. Rather, you have to go back and say that the Mishnah is talking about a strong wall. V'afilu lo chasr, even if the animal doesn't tunnel under, it doesn't make a difference. The person did everything he could, and that's why the Mishnah says pater. V'chiyitmar de Rabba aseifa itmar. When Rabba made his statement about the idea of tunneling under, that was actually going on the seifa, and the end of the Mishnah as follows. Hinicha b'chama, it said that if he puts the animal in the sun, o shemisara l'cheresh otav v'kater, and he gives the animal over to a deaf, mute, an imbecile, or a minor, v'yotzta v'hizika, and then the animal goes out and damages chayiv. So then the Mishnah said chayiv, because over there, let's say you put it out in the sun, you should realize the animal is going to be very uncomfortable and is going to try to get out. That's why he's responsible. And Amar Rabba, and on that part of the Mishnah, Rabba said, v'afilu chasra, even if the animal tunnels its way out, you're still going to be chayiv. And the Gemara explains, lo mi boy hecha de lo chasra, we don't even need to say in a case where it doesn't tunnel its way out, the kula v'pshiu, everything he did was negligent, for sure he's going to be chayiv. Ela afilu chasra nami, but even if the animal tunneled its way out, which again is not a normal thing to do, mahu detema, because then what might you have said, havelat chilaso b'pshia v'sofa bonus, that there's an initial negligence, but at the end it's an onus, who's going to expect the animal to tunnel its way out? Kamash malon, and so that's what it's teaching us, the kula pshia, it's all considered pshia, even if it tunnels its way out. My time, what's the reason? Da'amar le, because he can say to him, Meida yadat, to cave in the shavakta b'chama, you surely knew that if you left the animal out in the sun, called tatztuka de'isla lemevad avda v'nafka, anything, by any means that it's able to get out, it would try to get out. That is something that you should have expected. You should have expected the animal to do anything to get out of that sun, and therefore we say that in that case, the person is responsible, even if the animal tunnels its way out. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Hotziyua listim, if the robbers take the animal out, so listim chayav, and then the robbers are chayav for any damage that is done. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Nun Vav Amud Beis.